Hi guys, this is Stan here. Welcome if you're new here. We all have that one hype fantasy or sci-fi book that everyone swears is going to be amazing, but turns out it is not the case. So here today, I'm going to expose myself to talk about all the popular sci-fi or fantasy books that I have DNF'd. But here, very importantly, we need to remember DNFing a book doesn't mean that book is terrible, but maybe they weren't for me at that moment. I still get why some of the books on this list got the love from this community, but they didn't just click for me. Most of the time, if I could push through, I would rather DNF a series rather than a book that I was currently reading because I pay for it and I want to finish it. But sometimes there could be some exceptions. And here what I mean by popular books are those that are very trendy on no matter book talk or booktube, or maybe they are written by popular authors. Here I don't mean like, guys, don't touch this book anymore, don't buy it, let's boycott it, nothing like that. It is just more about taste and timing for myself. But first, I want to say a huge thank you to my Patreon because without their support, it is not easy to keep on creating. And if you enjoy what you're currently watching, you may consider becoming my Patreon and the link will be in the description below. I'm in the process of setting up a Discord server, so if you have any ideas or like what sort of channels I should include, you could let me know over Patreon. If not, you could still like this video and let me know which popular fantasy book or sci-fi you have ever DNF'd. I'm very curious to find out what popular books will be in the comment below. So without further ado, let's chat about all these popular books that I have DNF'd. So the very first book on this list is Legends Lattes by Travis Baldree. I picked this one up firstly because of the magical readathon. One of the prompts is about optimal read, and the other reason is the Reddit fantasy bingo, and I have to check out a cozy fantasy. So Legends Lattes, a very popular cozy fantasy book when it was firstly released, seems to be a perfect choice. In case you haven't heard about Legends Lattes, which I highly doubt, it is about Viv, an orc wanna retire from her adventure, so she set up a cafe in a little town. I always describe this book as like a restaurant simulator, where Viv is always in this cycle of completing tasks. Let's say she needs to think about a new menu, recruiting some staff, doing grocery, or maybe marketing. The reason why I DNF Legends Lattes as a series is because I know that cozy fantasy focuses more on a low-stake adventure with a lovely group of characters and a happy ending. But to me, the plot itself just lacks a bit of a focus because majority of the time, we are just watching how Viv gonna taking off all these tasks. As a cozy fantasy, all the problems, all the challenges that Viv need to face will be resolved in just 1 or 2 chapters. I also think that not just for Viv, but all the side characters that we're gonna meet in this lovely cafe, I just feel that they are a bit underdeveloped. I guess part of the reason why I didn't enjoy Legends Lattes as much as I want to is just because I have checked out other cozy fantasy that were published later than Legends Lattes, and they kind of solve the problems that I have with this book. Legends Lattes is like a laid-back thriller book, and I think it is perfect for you if you are going through quite a lot of chunky fantasy series. I know that there was a prequel out in last year, and then in the coming November, there will be a sequel, but I just don't think I will keep on reading it. The next one, you wouldn't be surprised to see me talking about it because it is The Magician by Raymond E. Feist, the first book of the Riftwar Saga. I got into this series only because of the Broken Binding Fantasy subscription, and I low-key think that this is possibly the worst series that I got from them. There were 3 books in this series, but actually you can split the first book into 2 volumes, and I could only manage to finish the first one, and I DNF'd the rest, obviously. This is an epic fantasy that was published in the 80s, and at first, from what I can remember or from what I've read, it was about a kitchen boy in a castle called Pug. And one day with his friend Thomas, they discovered a potential danger coming out from a portal. So throughout this series, we will witness the growth of Puck from a kitchen boy to a great magician. At the same time, Thomas seems to be pulled into a darker magic. I DNF'd this series after the first volume, right? And the reason is pretty simple. I just don't care. I did find some of the elements in this book is interesting. Let's say the adventure itself. Even in just the very first volume, we're gonna see quite a lot of different landscapes in this world. And I also found the foreign race coming from a portal is quite an exciting concept. But the pacing of this series is just significantly much slower than others, especially when you compare it to other modern fantasy. Every chapter is just too long for me, and there was not too much progress in it. And the progress of every chapter just falls into this similar structure. If we say the first chapter is like a setup, fine, but imagine the rest is like the same. I really try hard to push through the second volume, but I just simply don't care about what's going on. I've never felt so bored about a fantasy series before, and because of this lack of interest, I really had to DNF this series, and I didn't regret this choice. Another very popular series that I DNF, and unlike the others, I DNF this series while I was reading the first book, and this is the only one. I am talking about The Empire of Silence by Christopher Ruocchio, the first book of the Sun Eater series. I think it is the most hype book I got on this list, and I think this series started to caught the attention of everyone maybe 2 years ago. Not too long ago, I think just last year, the Broken Binding announced that they're going to do a special edition for this whole series. With such a good reputation online, I think it would be a good reason for me to start this series as well, so I started the first book in just this summer. This is basically a story about Hadrian, who later known as the infamous Sun Eater in this universe. Then we were thrown back to his adolescence to witness what he is going to go through and why he grows into such a monster. So from what I have already completed, I would describe the pacing of the Sun Eater series is kind of like the Riftwar Saga, not as fast as other modern fantasy works, although this one is a modern one. We would literally follow every step of how Hadrian was brought up and what his dream is. But what I really can't connect to is the journey itself. I find the plot of Hadrian just kept on resetting and taking away things that I started to develop my interest in. The side characters, not until you are quite late into the story and you know, you are the important one, just kind of like faded in the background. That is the reason why I can't really finish the first book, and I know some of you guys would say that I am missing out something real good. If I push out just a bit more, maybe at least finish the second book, things will start to look different and get a bit better. So I would say I'm giving this series a soft DNF to wait a better timing for me to start this series again. In 2025, if you watch my video long enough, you know that there are two longer epic fantasy series that I want to finish by the end of the year, the Raag Saga and the Wheel of Time. I read these two series back to back. So let's see if next year in 2026, when I am free from all these commitments, this longer series, will I enjoy this Sun Eater series more? I really hope that I can at least get to the end of the second book and see would my mind change. If we are looking at sci-fi, I actually have another set of books, and this is also from the Broken Binding, but this time it is from their sci-fi subscription. If I remember correctly, I think it is their very first set of books, and strictly they are not like a series, but written by the same author. And I am talking about the Andy Weir set. So we have the Martian, Project Hail Mary, and Artemis. Back in maybe last year, it was actually my very first time to start sci-fi properly, and I did it with The Martian, a very popular book and movie adaptation, right? I think overall it is still a very interesting, entertaining story because we are looking at how one gonna survive in the space alone. But what stopped me from reading the next two books, Project Hail Mary and Artemis, is only because they are a bit too hardcore for me. I am not like a massive science student, and quite a lot of time in The Martian, we are looking at, let's say, how much supply left for our main character, how long left he can survive in the space alone, and what sort of chemical reaction we have to go through, like all those like carbon, all those like hydrogen, what sort of end product we are looking at. As a first-timer to try out any sci-fi, yes, in the story we still got other elements, let's say family and friends or maybe even politics, but these sort of like science lessons are a bit too much for me, so I decided to not read the rest of his works. Now we are jumping back to fantasy because the next series I have is The Swordcatcher by Cassandra Clare, the first book of the Chronicles of Castellan series. I hope it is how you say it. I picked this series up when it's first out, so my memory is quite foggy and cloudy, and I can't really remember the title of this series. Before, I haven't checked out any works by Cassandra Clare, and I think she's more known for her YA work, so I'm also a first-time reader, and it is almost 2 years ago. In fact, the very first video I made on this channel is about this book, but don't watch that video please, the setup was awful. In the first book, we're going to follow two main characters. The first one is called Cal. He is like a dummy, a protector to the prince, and the other one is called Lin, a physician coming from a minority group. And the reason why I DNF'd this series though, honestly, I couldn't remember because it is way too long ago. Even I saw the sequel was out in Waterstones, I really don't give an F to pick this book up and see what's going to happen because I don't even remember you. So you can really just say I simply don't find this series fun enough, and I think the plot of our two main characters were not well developed. Like I said, I know that Cassandra Clare mostly wrote YA before moving into this adult fantasy romance, but I just don't know how to describe this feeling. Overall, no matter it is the plot, the character, the magic system, the romance, nothing really stuck out for me and it just feels a bit underwhelming. So what's the point of continue with this series? And the same logic can be used for the next series. We have Godkiller by Hannah, the first book of the Fallen Gods series. In this series, worshipping a god is forbidden, and we are going to follow three main characters. The first one is a Godkiller, then we have a girl who wants to untie the bond to a white light god. At last, a knight turned into a baker. They don't really know much about each other's past, and they may even got pulled into a bigger political conspiracy. I remember the Godkiller itself is not really a terrible read, but the build-up, the pacing, and the introduction of the cast is quite slow in the beginning. And I mean, this book is not long already, but it took almost half of it for these three main characters finally come together and start this journey. Although the ending is quite captivating and interesting, I am just not interested in to find out what's going to happen next. The last book on this list is slightly different because it is a grimdark Indian myth-inspired fantasy series, and I am talking about The Sons of Darkness by Gourav Mohanty, the first book of I don't really know how to say the name of this series. I'll put it on the screen though. Like how this book was advertised, it was almost like a Song of Ice and Fire by George R. Martin, where we're gonna follow a huge group of ambitious, morally great characters with magics and prophecy. This book is also quite politics heavy. I would say this book is really ambitious. As someone who is not familiar with Mahabharata, and the scope of the plot is massive, I did find it challenging to follow every detail. Also, with the POVs jumping in between each other, you may find it difficult to follow every individual arc and sometimes confusing. So what it leads to is I can't really vibe with the books and I honestly couldn't connect to any of the characters. Even for all the books that I've just mentioned, if you just give me some little hints, I can still vaguely remember who the main characters are and what their relationships are going to be like. But back to The Sons of Darkness, I genuinely couldn't remember anything from it, which is scary. I finished this book maybe last April. I just remember maybe in the middle chunk of it, there was like a tournament and there's like a sudden attack. That's all I can remember from this book. If this book can be more accessible in terms of the writing style, or maybe not changing the POV, switching it too much, especially for those readers like me who is not familiar with the Indian myths or mythologies, I would say this book could be better. But obviously, I'm not interested in this series at all and I really have to DNF it. So that's all the popular fantasy or sci-fi series that I have ever DNF'd in my life. There is a total of 7, which to be honest, I don't think it is that bad. And it also just shows you how many other series that I managed to push through. And how about you? Have you ever DNF'd any popular fantasy series? You may want to share which is possibly the most controversial one in the comment below. So thank you for watching, guys. If you don't want to miss out any fantasy TBR, wrap-up, reading vlog, or any other fun ideas like this one, you may want to subscribe to my channel and like this video. I'll see you all real soon. Goodbye.